Okay, so of course we can't finish up our financial foundation module without talking about the importance of debt and avoiding the slippery slope of debt. So let's talk about what is debt. Some people have the misunderstanding that I don't think debt is bad. Well, of course I think debt is bad, but we have a different definition of what actually is debt versus what's leverage and using other people's money. So let's talk about what actually is debt and that, road to financial ruin, right? So you have a job, right? You're making this money. This is your lifetime capital income, right? So you're making money. It's coming through your lifetime capital potential tank. It's coming through your inflow, and you're paying your taxes, right? There's your tax leakage, okay? So you're paying your taxes, and then you can't afford to save any money into those two tanks. The tanks are gone, right? So you can't afford to save or invest, which means that you're just spending it all. Okay, so whatever you're not paying in taxes, you're spending. So that is what a lot of people's situation is, they get into this situation where all that money is just flowing through and they're not saving anything. So then what happens? Well, life's unexpected pressures come along and you have a major capital expense. So a major capital expense is something that you can't afford to pay for with that monthly cash flow. So what do you have to do? Well, you have to borrow the money, right? You're forced to borrow. So you go into debt. Now you'll notice that we have this liability. This is a future liability that needs to be paid for with our future income obligation. In other words, if this dried up, if we lost our source of income, or if we didn't have any flow of income coming in here to help pay for that, we'd be in trouble. Now you'll also notice what's happening right around in here. Can you see that part of your lifestyle is now affected, right? You're not spending as much money anymore because some of your money has got to go towards servicing that debt and paying down that debt, right? All right, so you must reduce that lifestyle expense to service that debt, right? So it's affecting your cash flow. Okay, so the slippery slope of debt. You have no collateral other than your job. What does collateral mean? Collateral is using an asset as collateral to secure somebody else's money, typically at a lower rate. So for example, let's say that you want to get a college loan. It's a little bit more expensive to get a college loan because you have no collateral in most cases, right? But if you're buying a car, you might get a pretty decent interest rate on a car because the car is being used as collateral. Unfortunately, though, the car's value goes down each year typically, so the banks are maybe not going to give you as good of an interest rate because they know the value of that asset that is being used as collateral is going down. But what about a house? Generally speaking, the value of the house is going to go up in value, so you could use that house as collateral to get a pretty good rate. A lot of times your mortgages are going to be the cheapest type of money because that house is a pretty good asset that can be used as collateral to secure the loan. So if you don't pay your car payment, they just take your car. If you don't pay your mortgage payment, they just take your house, right? But when you're actually going into true debt where you're borrowing money without collateral, the only thing you have is future income. That's all you've got. So you take out a loan from your parents, right? And you just tell them that you're going to pay them back, but there's no collateral there to secure that loan. Something like that. So your extra cash flow that you're making, right in here, we have that money that was going to go towards paying down that debt, which eventually would pay it down. And now you've got all your money back. So you've paid off the debt. Life is good. You're back to spending all your money again, but you're still not saving any money, are you? You're just spending it all. So what happens? Well, other unexpected expenses are going to follow, and you're going to be forced to end up borrowing again. When you borrow again, your lifestyle is affected, which you should have just been saving that money because now you got to put that money towards the debt anyway, right? And unfortunately, if you keep going down this slippery slope, you're going to be required, most of your income is going to be required to service that debt as you just get up to your eyeballs in debt and you can't, survive anymore, because it's going to happen as other expenses happen and you actually borrow up to your limit. This is definitely what you're going to try to avoid. So debt can definitely be a slippery slope. It's something that you definitely need to avoid. And this is what we call debt. Now, what is collateral and leverage and using other people's money? Why don't we call this debt? Okay, well, when we borrow other people's money, theoretically, we're going to borrow it at a lower rate. Maybe we're borrowing it at 5% and we're earning 6% over here on our money. Okay, so our money is being used as collateral to secure that loan. Now, why don't we call this debt? Well, we don't call it debt, even though we might have some of our cash flow, okay, that might be going towards paying down that debt. But if we lost our income over here, right? If we no longer had our income, we could still pay this off out of our savings vehicle, right? Out of our safe tank. We have the money to pay this off. But theoretically, if this is only costing us 5 and this is earning us 6, we're gonna use other people's money and allow our money to keep growing, like we talked in one of the previous lessons, right? Okay, so that is not considered debt. It's called leverage. It's called using other people's money, because you have the money, you have the asset to pay it off. Now, it doesn't always have to be just the safe tank. What about your risk tank? You can actually go to your brokerage account, your broker, and you can borrow money from the broker using your brokerage account as collateral. Now, there's a lot of things to consider with that, so make sure you talk to a professional before you do that. But you could use your investment as collateral, and you could borrow somebody else's money. So once again, theoretically, maybe you're getting 8% over here, and you're able to borrow somebody else's money at 5%. That is a great position to be in. You're making more money than what it's costing you to borrow that money. Now, remember, this, if you look at typical accounting 101, your assets are greater than your liabilities, which means you're not in debt. You have the money to pay that off if this money is available and accessible. You wouldn't want to be using money that you can't get to, obviously. That's why, I prefer, using an example like this, where your money is safe. That's the best scenario and less risk, because the money is easily accessible when you need it to go from here to here if you ever needed to pay that off. Okay, so something to consider, the difference between debt and leverage, but you definitely want to avoid debt, which means you need to start building up these tanks so you can use them as collateral.